Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today. I'm happy to be joined today by many special guests, including the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, Leduc Beaumont MLA, Brandon Lunty, and Athabasca Barrhead Westlock MLA, Glenn Van Dyken, for a few days of summer already, marking the end of a very busy and productive session of spring session in the legislature. The legislature, of course, is now closed, and the MLAs have gone home to their ridings. Political watchers do like to call this time of year the barbecue circuit, and that implies it's the less serious side of being an elected official. But that's not how we see it, though. It's an opportunity to get out there and connect with constituents on their home turf. And that's one of the most important parts of the job. Well, this summer, along with rodeos and pancake breakfasts, our government will be doing something a little bit different. We'll be traveling the province, seeking input in no less significant topic than the future of Alberta itself. The time is right for this critical discussion. Albertans recognize that Canada has not been working for our province for a long time. Albertans subsidize Ottawa to the tune of $20 billion a year. What do we get in return? When we voted in a referendum to trigger an equalization renegotiation, Ottawa ignored us. When we get other provinces on side to demand an overhaul of Bill C-69, the No New Pipelines Act, Ottawa ignored us. When we told them to stay out of provincial jurisdiction, Ottawa ignored us. When we tell them to reverse their catch and release criminal policies to make our streets safer, Ottawa ignored us. When we unite with Saskatchewan to explain the net zero power regulations and how they're completely unworkable for us, again, Ottawa ignores us. When Alberta businesses say that a production cap on oil and gas will cripple the industry, they ignore us once more, and the list goes on. But you know what Ottawa can't help but be fixated on, and that is punishing our energy sector and layering on policies to keep it in the ground. For the last 10 years, Ottawa, led by successive Liberal governments propped up by their NDP allies, have attacked our economy and taken direct aim at Alberta's core industries. They've killed several major pipeline and resource projects, driving away hundreds of billions in investment. Their West Coast tanker ban specifically blocks Alberta oil from accessing world markets. Their excessive industrial carbon taxes and the new oil and gas production cap are designed to keep our world-class oil and gas reserves in the ground. And net zero mandates on everything from power to vehicles are causing the cost of living to increase, business costs to soar, and are even endangering the stability of our power grid in the dead of winter. We've also started a process to work with Ottawa to see if we can work through these issues, and we're hopeful that that will lead to a conclusion, but so far we have not seen any meaningful change. But whenever we have faced these challenges, Alberta has always come together. Albertans have always come together to defend our province, just like we will do now. It's time to lean on each other, ensure that we're having the right conversations, and figure out a path forward that will benefit the people of Alberta. Our government wants people from all industries, communities, and walks of life to shape the direction that this great province will take in the future. And so I'm pleased to announce the Alberta Next Panel, which will lead these vital discussions. Led by a diverse group of experts and community leaders, the panel will host discussions across Alberta, gathering ideas and discussing potential solutions to the issues that we're facing. This will be done through a province-wide series of town halls with both in-person and virtual options beginning in July and wrapping up in October. We're also launching an online survey to ensure every Albertan can make their voice heard. The Alberta Next Panel will put Albertans in the driver's seat. It will give them the rightful opportunity to decide how Alberta can become stronger and more sovereign within a united Canada. It will give the people who live, work, and raise families in our great province the opportunity to share their voices, their values, and their ideas. What we hear will help us map out Alberta's future. They will consider and hear from Albertans on the risks and benefits of ideas like establishing an Alberta pension plan, utilizing an Alberta Provincial Police Service rather than the RCMP for community policing, whether Albertans should pursue constitutional changes to the composition of the Senate and the House of Commons, for instance, which, if any changes to federal transfer payments and equalization Albertans should demand from the federal government, potential immigration reform that would give the provincial government more oversight over who comes into the province, just like Quebec, and changes to how Alberta collects personal income tax. Albertans will also have the opportunity to put forward their own ideas for discussion. I have the honour of leading this important work, and as chair, I'd like to introduce the members of the Alberta Next Panel. I'll be joined by 4 of my caucus colleagues: Minister of Environment, Rebecca Schultz; MLA for Leduc Beaumont, Brandon Lunty; MLA for Athabasca Barrhead Westlock, Glenn Van Dyken; and newly elected, soon to be sworn in, MLA-elect for Olds Didsbury Three Hills, Tara Sawyer. And joining us will be some of Alberta's most accomplished leaders, including those representing ranching, law, finance, business, energy, the nonprofit sector, and academia. I'm pleased to introduce the Honourable Bruce MacDonald, former Justice of the Court of Appeal of Alberta; Samita Anand, co-chair of the Premier's Council on Multiculturalism and Vice President Above and Beyond Care Services; Melody Gardner-Skiba, a passionate business and agricultural advocate; Trevor Toome, Director of Fiscal and Economic Policy at the University of Calgary School of Public Policy; Adam Legg, President of the Business Council of Alberta; Grant Fagerheim, President and CEO of Whitecap Resources, Inc.; Dr. Aiken Asakwadi, Physician and Section Chief of the Didsbury Hospital; Benny Zhu, Dr. Benny Zhu, an experienced community health expert; Michael Binion, President of Quest Air Energy; and Andrew Judson, Vice Chairman for the Prairies at the Fraser Institute. We'll also be adding Indigenous representation to the panel in the coming weeks, after an Indigenous Albertan who had agreed to be a member of the panel unfortunately suffered a health incident this past weekend and will be unable to join us. Our mandate will be to find ways to strengthen Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. The Alberta Next Panel will ensure that people across the province have a chance to share their ideas at this critical time. And when the panel has wrapped up these discussions, it will compile ideas and recommendations that will be put to a referendum vote in 2026. I have tremendous faith in Albertans. Alberta is full of engaged citizens who care deeply about their province and its future. And I truly believe that they will give us a wealth of ideas that will ensure our beloved province remains forever strong and free. Alberta Next is how we start to make that happen. I encourage Albertans from every background, political stripe, and region to share your ideas with us, either in person or online. Your voice matters, and our province's future depends on it. Thank you, and I would now invite Adam Legg to say a few words.
Good afternoon. Premier, first off, thank you for the honor of serving my fellow Albertans in this panel. The Alberta Next Panel is an important initiative to listen to Albertans about what they feel Alberta should do to defend our interests and have more control over our future while remaining within Canada, or in other words, how to build a strong Alberta within a united Canada. I often say Canadian provinces are subject to the fate of geography. Based on where it's located, each province has unique landscapes, assets, strengths, and realities, which makes it very clear that a one-size-fits-all approach does not work in a country as large and diverse as Canada. Right now, there's a need to restore fairness and functionality in our country. In the absence of fairness and functionality, each province should be within their rights to explore ways to have greater control of their destiny and defend their interests while remaining firmly in the Federation. That is what this process is all about, and I and the Business Council of Alberta are committed to a strong Alberta in a united Canada. A lack of fairness and functionality means that many Albertans are frustrated by a Canada they feel doesn't work for them. This is also true among many businesses and many of the members that I represent. There's frustration due to an overreach of federal powers into provincial jurisdiction and a decade worth of problematic federal policy, regulation, and decisions that have restricted Alberta's economic potential, hurt its investment attractiveness, and resulted in families losing opportunities and incomes. There have been vast impacts. The oil and gas sector has not been able to grow production and exports to levels aligned with global demand because of Bill C-69, 48, Bill C-59 greenwashing provisions, and the proposed oil and gas emissions cap. Agriculture has had its ability to operate made more challenging due to clean fuel standards, proposed fertilizer restrictions, and EV mandates that don't work in rural and remote areas. The electricity sector is being handcuffed by the clean electricity regulations, which don't work for Alberta due to our geography and state of current technology. Additionally, it's disturbing that the penalty associated with these regulations is a criminal charge and jail time. Technology and innovation. The recently implemented greenwashing provisions restrict companies and clean tech entrepreneurs from developing ideas to reduce emissions and find solutions to energy challenges because the Competition Bureau now puts such onerous requirements on statements that no company or entrepreneur will risk doing so because of the offensively high penalties. Canada will see innovation and emissions reduction investment plummet as a result of these greenwashing provisions. In manufacturing, the plastic ban has hurt opportunities for Alberta's petrochemical sector. The immigration system has been eroded in terms of integrity and alignment to regional workforce needs and has turned the majority of Canadians negative on a traditional strength of our country. Business leaders want to invest and grow jobs, but under the current federal policy and regulatory environment, most cannot convince investors or their boards that an investment in Canada will be even permitted, will be timely, or will generate competitive returns. This has caused tremendous frustration among business leaders and ultimately lost economic value, jobs, incomes, as well as provincial and federal government revenues. Now, Alberta contributes an outsized impact to Canada. For example, Canada's natural resource sector, a good portion of that located in Alberta, is 6.5 times larger than the automotive and aerospace sectors combined. Alberta is responsible for 23% of goods exported in Canada, over 15% of the Canadian economy, with only 11% of the population. And yet our economic potential, our ability to contribute even more to the Federation has been curtailed over the past decade. Alberta per capita GDP is lower today than it was a decade ago. Albertans and Canadians are worse off as a result. And further, the negative consequences of Canada's lost economic decade have become clear because of the trade challenges with the United States. If Canada had approved more projects and expanded production and export of its natural resources, we would be far less reliant on the United States and be a more resilient economy. Over the next few months, I'm keen to hear the views of Albertans on the proposed options and will do so with great respect. I believe we must continue to work constructively with Prime Minister Carney and the federal government, giving them the benefit of the doubt, for I believe that he and his government want to enable a stronger Canada. I intend to work positively with him and his colleagues, as I've done for years. In the grand scheme of things, the desired outcome here is fairness and functionality of our country, which will lead to better policy and better decisions that respect each province. That ball is in Ottawa's court, and time is limited to address this. In the meantime, the Alberta Next Panel is an important process to listen to Albertans about what they feel we should do to have greater control over our future and send a message that the continuing project called Canada still needs some work. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go into our media Q&A. We'll be taking one question, one follow-up. We're going to start off on the phones today, then we'll come back here to the mic in the room. And just a reminder for the outlets here today as well, if you could allow each outlet to ask a question before doing repeats on an outlet, that would be much appreciated. With that, we'll go to the phones. Operator, could you put through our first question, please?
We have a question from Alex Dhaliwal from Global News. Your line is open.
Alex Dhaliwal, Rebel News. Premier, thanks for taking my question. So regarding last night's by-election, is your government concerned by future vote splits with the Republican Party of Alberta, considering they received a few hundred votes in Edmonton, Ellerslie, and 17% in Old?
Well, this is part of the reason for the Alberta Next process. We know that we have to be able to make a strong case for a united or a strong Alberta within a united Canada, but we also have to address the things that are causing the rise in that sentiment. I share Adam's hope that we'll be able to work constructively with Mark Carney to be able to do that. We've got discussions going on as we speak. Unfortunately, we just haven't seen a lot of action yet. And so I would say that the sentiment that you're seeing was created in Ottawa by 10 years of terrible policy. And I think it can also be dialed down by Ottawa by undoing 10 years of terrible policy and allowing us to get back to investing and allowing us to be able to chart our own course as a province in our areas of jurisdiction. So I think that the jury is very much still out on the future of that movement, but I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to address these concerns so that that sentiment subsides.
And on a separate topic, regarding the survey on age-inappropriate materials that was released this weekend, what is your message to the 18% of Albertans who either support access to content which may be sexually crude at all ages or as early as kindergarten through grade 6? Did you find this survey result concerning?
I have to wonder if the individuals who responded that way had a chance to look at the materials. We made them available with a warning about graphic depiction. And if we have to make a warning label for adults to observe materials, then it should be pretty obvious that 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds shouldn't be seeing those materials. There's no benefit in giving graphic sexual material to children before they're old enough to understand what they're seeing. And that was what the policy is all about, is that we're looking to make sure that there's age-appropriate materials to teach kids about the basics of sexual reproduction at the right age in the right way. And some of those materials were clearly inappropriate. In fact, some of the books even said in the warning that they were not intended for an under 18 audience. So I think that we've taken the prudent approach, and I would hope anyone who has any doubt should go online and look at the materials for themselves. I think they would come to the same conclusion we have.
Thank you. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Zach Farrer from the Canadian Press, your line is open.
Hi, I'm hoping you can actually just explain to me how this effort is going to be different than the Fair Deal panel of 2019. Like, the big difference I see is that this panel is going to recommend referendum questions rather than recommend actual policy to leave in the provincial government's hands. Like, is that the main difference this time around?
Well, I don't want to prejudge what Albertans might put forward, but I can tell you the Fair Deal panel had 25 different recommendations. We were able to act on most of them. There was a referendum question that we put forward on equalization, and while we didn't get the result we wanted, I can tell you that it did spark a national conversation. You now have Newfoundland, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan all saying the same thing that we do, which is it's unfair for small provinces to transfer money to Ottawa so that it can be spent by big provinces who should have powerful economies. And so that's wending its way through the court right now. So I think that sometimes these the conversations that we have here are able to lead to a national dialogue, and that's what we're trying to do. We identified 6 issues that we know have come up in the previous round of the Fair Deal panel that we think Albertans now may want to put to a referendum so that we can take some action on them, but there may be others, and that's what we want to be able to explore.
Perfect, thank you. And for a follow-up, like, I definitely don't need to tell you, Premier, like, the West wants in certainly isn't a new idea. You know, we're over 50 years of that as a political talking point, really, and really an action point, I guess you can call that too. Do you think this will be the be-all, end-all of Alberta's fighting with Ottawa if this panel and this round of town halls and this potential round of referendum questions, is a success? Are you hoping this is the last round of this?
I would say it's not so much the West wants in as the West wants Ottawa out of its hair. I mean, Ottawa has been interfering in every aspect of our provincial jurisdiction in deeper and deeper ways for about a decade now. And we've had enough of it. So I would say that this is trying to reset the relationship to get Ottawa focused on its areas of jurisdiction. I think we've made some good first strides. The Western premiers, followed up by the Council of the Federation, in the last 2 years have been telling Ottawa, focus on your own knitting. Get to the 2% NATO commitment so that we can maintain our trade ties with our important trading partners. Build strategic infrastructure like rail and highways and rail lines. And ports. I mean, those are the things that really we do need the federal government to do. They need to make sure that we've got good trade ties so that we can have open markets so that we're all able to achieve what we want to achieve economically. And then we can talk about, once we've generated revenue, what kind of social programs the country wants to have. They've put it backwards. They're spending a lot of money, borrowing money to do it, meanwhile killing the economic drivers that are meant to pay for all of it. So I would say that what we are hoping to do, and I think we've already begun, having a really important national conversation about how to get the engine of the economy going again. But we cannot create the investment climate that we're looking for without addressing the 10 terrible policies that have led us to this situation and caused the cancellation of hundreds of billions of projects. So yes, we'll have a conversation in Alberta. We hope it spills over into other provinces. You may have seen that we had a joint caucus meeting with Saskatchewan. We intend to have more of those. We've got a Council of the Federation meeting again in July, and I'll bring some of these ideas to the table as well, and maybe we'll find some allies in being able to advance a more sensible balance of powers between Ottawa and the provincial governments.
Thanks, Jack. We're going to come now to the mic on the ground here. Go ahead.
Yeah, g'day, Premier. Emma Graney from the Report on Business at the Globe. I've got some comments specific on energy. The comments you had to Bloomberg about a pipeline to the West Coast, a plan for that, or even a deal in a, quote, matter of weeks. I'm curious why you're confident that you'll have something like that in a matter of weeks. Are there any Indigenous outfits involved in these negotiations? What's that actually looking like on the ground right now?
I can tell you that we have been talking with all of the pipeline companies since I first got elected and said that we would like to double our oil and gas production as we seek ways to reduce emissions. And I've also equally said to the Prime Minister as well as publicly that if we have to get taxpayer dollars at the federal level to fund yet another pipeline, then that is a failure of the process. I think we failed at the exercise. What we're trying to do is get an investment climate where private sector partners will want to come forward. And I think if we have a commitment from the federal government on the 2-year time frame, a pathway to yes, and a genuine commitment to get there in conjunction with the Pathways project, I feel confident that either one proponent or a consortium would come forward. And I've also said with the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, that's our signal to First Nations, that we firmly believe that any major linear projects of this magnitude really do need to have Indigenous equity stake. We've already underwritten $750 million in that kind of equity ownership. We intend to do more. That's why we increased the loan guarantee to $3 billion. But that would be an essential part of it as well, yes.
And then you've tied these pipeline projects to pathways,
Correct,
kind of like this, kind of deal with the PM, I guess you want to put it. One of the stumbling blocks with pathways is that the government of Alberta has not committed to helping with revenue certainty, those contracts for difference and that kind of thing. So will you actually commit to coming to the table on revenue certainty specifically, quite apart from the investment tax credit? And also my other question you didn't quite answer, which was why you're confident about a deal in the next 2 weeks on a pipeline. Thanks.
I'll answer the first one, or the last one
Thanks.
first, is because we've been in active conversations with many pipeline companies. And I feel like we're pretty close to having either one or a consortium come forward. And so I would hope that would happen very soon, because we need to send a signal to Albertans very soon and test the new process the Prime Minister is putting forward. This can't be a years-long process. That's why we want to get underway very quickly. So we'll have more to say once that becomes available. And then the first question you had.
Revenue certainty, contracts.
Oh, well, we don't love getting involved in the private sector. We do on occasion when we feel like there's a need to de-risk a project. The ways in which we try to de-risk a project are through things like refundable capital expenses. That's what our ACIP grant is built on, is the Alberta Carbon Capture Incentive Program. So once a project is built, we would then rebate 12% of the capital cost associated with that. We're in the process as well of talking about a new way of recycling the tier revenues. As you may know, our tier program, companies that are over the average when it comes to their emissions, they pay into a fund, and then we make decisions about how to spend that money. We've spent $1.8 billion on things like carbon capture utilization and storage, hydrogen projects, bitumen beyond combustion, geothermal, nuclear studies, and so on and so forth. But we're thinking that may be the way that we can support industries that invest in carbon capture, is recycling those revenues back to them if they spend it on carbon abatement. They do that in Saskatchewan, they do that in Ontario. So that would be the way that I think that we would be able to assist. That's what we're prepared to come to the table on. What we have discovered is that because the federal government charges much higher personal and corporate income taxes, anytime that there is an incentive, they get it paid back a lot faster than we do. We saw that with that Alberta, with the APIP program, the Petrochemical Incentive Program. Our incentive is getting paid back over 12 years. The federal incentive is getting paid back over 4. And so that's why we feel that because they have so much more means to raise revenue, it is their policy that they want to pursue on an aggressive timeline. We feel that they would have to take on a larger share of the cost. And when we couple that with a pipeline where we can earn revenue, we think that's the value proposition. So if the project costs 10 to 20 billion, and then because of a new 1 million barrel a day pipeline, they're able to get 20 billion a year in new resource revenues year after year after year, that's a pretty good trade-off, I think. And that's what we're looking to do.
Thank you. And I know we have a lot of folks here today. I'd love to give each outlet a question before moving to doubling up on outlets. But saying that, we'll go to our next at the mic.
Hi, Carrie Tate from the Globe and Mail. Thanks for taking my question. My question is, we've seen that your former Chief of Staff, Marshall Smith, was living in a house owned by Sam Mauritius' sister. People in your office were frequently going to hockey games. there's allegations that Mr. Smith was advocating on behalf of private companies tied to Mr. Marash. What was your relationship with Mr. Marash?
I saw him socially a couple of times, and the same thing that I have with many people who seek to have a relationship with our government. I have formal meetings with them, sometimes meet with them one-on-one, but I would say that it was a very professional relationship.
When was the last time that you met with him?
I don't know, over a year ago.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie. We'll go to our next at the mic.
Thanks, Carrie. Adam McVicker with Global News in Calgary. Hi, Premier. How will municipalities be involved in this process, given those legislative changes under Bill 18 that require Alberta municipalities with agreements with the federal government? Those agreements must go through the provincial government.
Is there anything in particular you're asking about? I'm sorry?
Just like how will municipalities be involved in this process, just given those changes that directly affect their relationship with the federal government?
Well, there's a couple that we've already seen that they've been flagged for us to see what those relationships are, and if they are consistent with our policies, then they get an immediate approval. We've already had to go through the process that way, and we rely on the ministry to be able to flag those. But I would say that the vast majority of these kinds of relationships are probably going to be consistent with our policies, but we have a couple of areas of concern, as you know. We don't believe in safe supply. We don't believe in supporting agencies that are giving people free drugs and enabling addiction. We think our approach of a recovery-oriented system of care is the right one, and so those would be the kind of things that I'm concerned about. But at the moment, we haven't seen anything that has caused us alarm.
And so, just to follow up, will municipalities be involved in this Alberta Next process? As you engage Albertans across the province, will you also be engaging with, municipal governments, councils, town councils, hamlets?
Yeah, we've got 10 different town halls. Every town hall I've gone to, I know that there's been municipal leaders there. When I go to different communities, I often meet with municipal councils. I just met with, I think, 10 councils when I was up in my rural north tour. And so we're very accessible. We have an online survey. We'll do town hall surveys. So yes, we believe everybody should participate in this process.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. My name is Arzuma with Radio Canada. So, Premier, how will the work of the Alberta Next Panel genuinely explore broad options for sovereignty without reinforcing the current two-party dynamic or being perceived as a UCP-controlled outlet?
Well, it's a government initiative, and so what we would hope is that people from all parties and all perspectives would participate in it, and that we'd be able to get some good ideas to put to the people. This is why I like referenda, is that referenda really aren't a left-wing or right-wing issue. They're kind of an everybody issue, and if Albertans as a whole want to put something to their fellow citizens, we want to give all Albertans a chance to vote on it. So that's the way that we can make sure that ultimately Albertans will have a say on anything that is being proposed.
And on the members, what makes them the best pick?
Oh my goodness, so many of them. Like to have the background, first of all, to have the representation that we do from Calgary with Rebecca Schultz, with Tara Sawyer, who's a producer in the food industry. She's a food producer and also Representative Central Alberta. We've got Glenn Van Dyken and Brandon Lunty, who represent the Edmonton area and further north, and then representatives from doctors as well as former court justice, academics, business leaders. We're really hoping to be able to have a very broad cross-section, so that, because everybody hears things a different way, and so when you have this many people able to hear the words from Albertans, I just want to make sure that we're not missing anything that is presented, and that we're going to reflect that when it comes down to the decisions that we need to make and put to Albertans. Thanks.
Awesome. We have time for a couple more questions. We'll go to our next at the mic.
Hi, Jason Marksar from CBC. How do you envision having this ballot of referendum questions on separation from Canada, and then as well as, pension plan or tax collection? How would those interact with people in mind? You understand public
Well,
opinion.
I don't know. I mean, we aren't putting a separation question forward. We're putting forward a question that would strengthen Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. There are two potential questions that are being put forward for citizen-initiated referenda, one from Thomas Lukasik, which has one perspective, and one from the Alberta Prosperity Project, which has another. And I've indicated if there are other referendum questions that get sufficient number of signatures from the people, 177,000, we would add those to the referendum. But at this moment, there isn't an active petition campaign. There's just a couple of questions that have been filed. And I don't know if either one of those or both are going to get the number of signatures. But we're going to go ahead and put forward the questions that we hear from Albertans. But our framework as a government is to be pursuing options within a united Canada.
My other question follows on what Kerry was asking. You referred to formal meetings with Mr. Maresh. Mr. Maresh and none of his agents or companies are listed on the lobbyist registry. Does it concern you that the government is dealing with, and you have been dealing with somebody who is not playing by the government's own rules regarding lobbying registration?
Well, I would say that there's a lot of lawsuits that are going on as a result of various allegations that have been made, statements of claim and statements of defense, including claims against the Globe and Mail. I don't know if there's any against your media outlet, but I would just rather let the process play out and see what the truth is. There's a lot of competing stories. There's a lot of truth, I think, that still needs to be on the table.
I'm sorry, you were saying that the truth is that you were just saying that you were had formal meetings with somebody who was not a lobbyist.
Well, I said I had informal meetings, as I do with a lot of people, on a lot of different issues. As you know, the person in question didn't have any contracts with the government of Alberta. So that's, I guess, the other part. I don't know what his obligation is to register as a lobbyist. I suppose that'll come out through the process.
Thank you, Jason. We have time for one last question. We'll go to our next at the mic.
Rick Bell, Postmedia. You talked about how you haven't heard a lot from the federal government on your concerns. You want the pipeline project and also the bad laws. Probably, I can understand how the federal government might not have said anything on the projects yet because they're evaluating these and looking over these lists. That may take a little bit of time. The laws don't take any time. Prime Minister Carney could come out today and say, we're not bringing in the emissions cap. He could come out today and say we're willing to compromise on the tanker ban. He could come out today and say I'm going to do a radical rewrite of the No More Pipelines. He could do that today. The projects, that takes time, a little time. But what do you feel about the fact that there isn't action on those things? Because you know as well as I and everybody here that even if he stood up today and said the emissions cap was not happening, that would be national news and monumental. So how do you feel about the fact that you're not even getting anything on that issue, not the project so much, but even on those issues which he could do today?
I'm dismayed, but not discouraged. I know that, and he knows, because I've mentioned it at every meeting. He knows what the 9 terrible laws are, and that we need to either have them repealed or substantially revised as a prerequisite to creating the investment climate that will allow the private sector to take on these major projects. So is it a matter of taking the time? I mean, he's only been elected 2 months, I think, not even. I don't think he's even hit his 2-month birthday. And so I understand how long it can take to put legislation together, which is why I can be patient for a few more months. But session starts on September 15th. So we'll know in 3 months whether or not we've made some progress. And by then we'll also be near the end of this process that we're going through with Alberta Next. And I'll have a pretty good idea of what Albertans would like us to put to a referendum question after that as well.
What do you think the federal government, Prime Minister Carney and his government, what should they take from the fact that you're having this panel? You're having these questions. You may have other questions. There may be citizen-initiated questions, including a question of Alberta leaving Canada. There's a separatist party, at least one. And all of this stuff is happening in Alberta. They're sitting in Ottawa or Brussels and looking at that. What message should they take from all of this stuff that's happening? Not that I'm equating the separatism with your thing, but I'm saying generally all of this stuff that's going on in Alberta that's getting the headlines, including this story. What's the message that you hope gets through to them, to his government and his cabinet?
Well, I hope he takes the separatist sentiment as seriously as I do. It's no joke, and it's the highest I've ever seen it. And the reason for it is because of bad policies in Ottawa. And as I mentioned, they could solve this. They could solve this by having a mea culpa moment, like they did when they repealed the carbon tax. The Canadians had enough with how far they were going with the carbon tax. And I would say that they calibrated incorrectly on those 9 other bad laws. So he's demonstrated that he can change course when he sees something that's incorrect. And so I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to persuade him of that over the next 3 months. And so I think that it really is in his court. I've told him he does need to take this sentiment seriously, and that he can very easily see it subside if he just addresses these issues.
Thanks, Rick. And that's all the time we have for questions
Thanks,
today. Thank you, everyone. And for our panel members, we'll just take a quick group photo if you want to come up to the podium.